Yeah, so that was the first previs that we did, and yeah, we were actually pretty happy with that. To be fair, so there wasn't much that changed in terms of the loot for that. It just had to change a bit once we got to implementing and stuff like that, and polishing. But yeah, so then the next question we needed to answer was what if the player has no instrument? So we have the regular flow of bard spell casting, right? So they have the instrument, they start casting the spell with one of their instruments, the lute, the lyre, the flute, the drum, or the violin. But then what if you go to jail or something, or you get disarmed and you don't have your instrument? Then what do you do? So we had a few ideas floating around. So we know obviously you need to use your voice. So that was without question kind of the default, right? But then how would you use your voice? Because there's a few different routes we could go. So we could just fall back to the vocal component. But then, as we said, it doesn't really fit within the context or the lore of the bard, right? And we're trying to sell a lore, and we're trying to sell a feeling, right? A role-playing experience. So the vocal component wouldn't really work because it's Latin, and Latin is probably something you would learn. It's not something you just manifest, right? So they're not formally educated typically, so it wouldn't really work. So there was a few other directions we could go. And yeah, like it must stay within the rules that we set for the bard, and they're musical, they're artists, right? They're not going to just spout random Latin phrases. So we had the idea of singing first of all. So this was a really cool idea. It was basically kind of based off the race. You would have a unique singing style. So for example, like orcs and dragonborns, they would kind of Mongolian throat sing or something like that, and then elves or tieflings would be kind of like Highland, or no, like Indian scale, like kind of microtonal singing like that. And then yeah, like dwarves and halflings would be kind of Highland singing, classic like Scottish, Irish type stuff. But by the sounds of it, you can tell that yeah, the other option was whistle. So whistle is a nice option because it's very, you can't tell based off of what gender is whistling typically, I don't think, right? It's pretty hard to pick out. Whereas singing, if we recorded that, we would have to record double because we would need to account for male and female vocals. Whereas whistling, it's you don't have that problem. But the problem with whistling is it's hard to get a lot of variation. It's hard to have actually, unless you're, and it's hard to find people who are very good at whistling. So that's also a challenge. Luckily, we had Robin, who one of our sound designers, who is basically a little songbird. It's kind of incredible. But yeah. So in the end, we decided not to go with singing. It would explode production. We're already creating a lot of assets with the instruments and recording that as well. We're already recording vocals for cinematics and stuff like that. So it was just kind of out of the question. It would have been really, really cool to do. But in the end, we went with whistling because, as I said, it's just easier for production. That was the main thing. But it's also it's kind of nice. In the end, it turned out pretty well. So yeah, it was cool.